Instead of manually creating threads one by one, which can be very inefficient and difficult to manage, we use the executors.newficit threadpool method, which is a built-in utility provided by Java that handles all the complexity of thread creation and management for us automatically behind the scenes. Imagine a small office that has exactly 3 desks available for workers to sit at and do their job. No matter how many tasks arrive at the office throughout the day, only 3 people can actively work at any given point in time because there are only 3 desks available and each worker needs a desk to perform their duties. This office analogy perfectly represents how a fixed thread pool works in Java, because no matter how many tasks we submit to the executor, only 3 threads will ever be actively running and processing tasks simultaneously, which prevents the computer from becoming overwhelmed and running out of memory or processing power by creating too many threads at once. In the code, we create a pool of exactly 3 threads using executors.newficit threadpool and pass the value 3 to it, and then we submit 5 tasks to this pool using a for loop, which means we are sending more work to the office than there are available desks to handle at that exact moment. The first 3 tasks are picked up immediately by the 3 available worker threads because all 3 desks are empty and ready at the start, and each of the 3 workers sits down and begins processing their assigned task right away without any waiting. The remaining 2 tasks, which are task 4 and task 5, do not get executed immediately, but instead they wait patiently in a queue, which is like a waiting area outside the office, and as soon as one of the 3 busy workers finishes their current task and frees up their desk, one of the waiting tasks immediately gets assigned to that newly available thread and begins execution. Finally, we call the shutdown method on the executor, which is like closing the office at the end of the working day, meaning no new tasks will be accepted from that point forward, but all the tasks that are already running or waiting in the queue will be allowed to complete fully and gracefully before the thread pool is completely shut down and all resources are released. We import the executor service interface and the executor's utility class from the java.util.concurrent package to gain access to thread pool creation and management capabilities in Java. We create an executor service instance called executor using executors.newficit threadpool and pass the value 3 to it, which creates a pool of exactly 3 worker threads that will be responsible for handling all the tasks we submit to the executor. We use a for loop that starts at 1 and runs until the value of I reaches 5, which means we are going to submit a total of 5 tasks to our thread pool for execution. We declare a local variable called task number inside the loop and assign the current value of I to it, which is necessary because Lambda expressions in Java require variables to be effectively final, and task number serves as that final copy of the loop variable. We call executor.execute and pass a Lambda expression to it, which submits a new task to the thread pool, and inside that Lambda we call system.out.println to print the message worker is processing task followed by the current task number to the console. We call executor.shutdown after the loop, which signals to the executor service that no new tasks will be submitted and it should gracefully finish executing all the currently submitted tasks and then release all the worker threads and clean up all resources associated with the thread pool. The key concept here is that even though we submit 5 tasks to the executor, the thread pool only ever uses 3 threads at any given time, which means the first 3 tasks are picked up immediately by the 3 available worker threads and the remaining 2 tasks wait in a queue until one of the 3 threads becomes free, and then they are picked up and processed, ensuring efficient and controlled use of system resources without creating an unlimited number of threads. A runnable is a task that does not return anything to the caller after it finishes executing, which means it simply performs its job silently in the background, and once it is done it just stops without handing back any result or value to the thread that submitted it, making it suitable only for fire and forget style operations where the outcome does not need to be retrieved or used anywhere else in the program. However, a callable is a much more powerful and sophisticated type of task because just like a professional chef who works in a kitchen and puts all their skill and effort into preparing a meal and then proudly returns a beautifully plated dish to the customer, a callable performs its work on a background thread, and when it is finished, it hands back a concrete result of a specific type to whoever submitted the task, making it ideal for situations where the outcome of the background work is actually needed by the rest of the program. When we submit a callable to our executor service using the executor.submit method, the executor immediately accepts the task and sends it off to a background thread for processing, and in return it gives us back a future object which acts as a placeholder or a promise that the result will be available at some point in the future, even though it may not be ready at that exact moment of submission. Think of this future object as the buzzer or pager that a cafe employee hands to you at the counter after you place your coffee order, which you hold in your hand while you go and find a seat and relax and do other things while your coffee is being carefully prepared behind the counter, and you do not need to stand there and stare at the barista the entire time waiting for it to be done. The coffee is not ready yet at the moment you receive the buzzer, but you are holding the guarantee in your hand that it will be ready soon and that you will be notified or able to retrieve it when the time comes without having wasted any of your time just standing and waiting doing nothing productive. When we call future.get on our future object, the program checks whether the result of the callable is already available, and if the background thread has already finished its work, then future.get immediately returns the computed result to us without any delay. But if the background thread is still busy working, then future.get causes the current thread to pause and wait patiently at that exact line of code until the background thread finishes and the result becomes available, and only then does it retrieve and return the final value to the caller so that it can be used in the rest of the program. We import all classes from the java.util.concurrent package to gain access to executor service, executors, callable, and future, which are all essential building blocks for asynchronous task execution in Java. We create an executor service instance called executor using executors.usinglythreadexecutor, which sets up a thread pool containing exactly one background thread that will be responsible for executing our submitted tasks. We define a callable of type string called coffeetask using a lambda expression which represents a task that will run on the background thread and will eventually return a string result when it finishes executing. We call thread.sleep inside the callable and pass the value 2000 to it, which pauses the background thread for 2 full seconds to simulate the real-world brewing time that a coffee machine would take to prepare a cappuccino. We return the string hot cappuccino from the callable, which represents the final product that the background task produces after the simulated brewing time has completed. We print the message ordering coffee to the console using system.out.println, which represents the moment the customer places their order before the brewing process begins. We call executor.submit and pass the coffee task callable to it, which sends the task off to the background thread for execution and immediately returns a future of type string which we store in a variable called buzzer that acts as a ticket or receipt for the pending result. We print the message doing other work while waiting to the console, which demonstrates that the main thread is completely free to continue performing other operations while the background thread is busy brewing the coffee independently. We call buzzer.get on the future, which causes the main thread to wait at that exact point until the background thread finishes executing the coffee task, and once the result is ready, buzzer.get retrieves and returns the string hot cappuccino, which we store in a string variable called result. We print the final message received followed by the value of result to the console using system.out.println, which displays received hot cappuccino, confirming that the asynchronous task completed successfully and the result was retrieved. We call executor.shutdown, which gracefully stops the executor service and releases all the background threads it was managing after all submitted tasks have been completed. The key concept here is that the callable and future combination allows the main thread to submit a long-running task to a background thread and continue doing other useful work without blocking and then retrieve the result at a later point in time when it is actually needed, making the program significantly more efficient and responsive. Completable Future is a modern and highly flexible way of handling asynchronous tasks in Java that allows your program to continue running smoothly without getting stuck waiting for a task to finish, because instead of blocking the main thread and forcing it to sit idle, it enables work to be carried out in the background while the rest of the program keeps moving forward, which makes your application more efficient, responsive, and scalable, especially when dealing with operations like API calls, database access, or heavy computations that take time to complete. Think of Completable Future as a smart and fully automated factory assembly line where a product starts at one station and then smoothly moves through a series of different stations, each performing its own specific task without requiring manual intervention or stopping the entire process at any point, which is exactly how Completable Future allows multiple stages of computation to be connected together in a clean and readable way. When we use supply sync, the process begins just like placing raw material onto the first station of the assembly line, where the work is handed off to a background thread that starts processing the data independently without disturbing the main thread, and this method is specifically designed for tasks that produce a result such as fetching data from a server, calculating a value, or reading from a file, so it acts as the starting point of the entire asynchronous pipeline. Once that initial task completes, the result automatically flows into the next stage, which is then apply, and this stage acts like a worker on the assembly line who takes the partially completed product and refines or transforms it into something more useful, such as modifying the fetched data, formatting it, or performing additional calculations. And the beauty of this step is that it does not require us to manually retrieve the result from the previous stage, because Completable Future takes care of passing it along seamlessly. After the transformation is done, the final stage then accept comes into play, which acts like the final quality check or packaging station in the factory, where the finished product is handled or consumed, such as printing the result, storing it, or sending it somewhere else. And unlike the previous steps, this stage does not return anything further because its purpose is simply to use the result rather than transform it again. The entire chain works in a flowing and non-blocking manner, where each stage automatically triggers the next one as soon as its work is done, without freezing the program or forcing it to wait unnecessarily. And this is what makes Completable Future extremely powerful, because it allows developers to write asynchronous code that looks structured and sequential while actually running efficiently in the background. So, overall, Completable Future transforms complex asynchronous programming into something much more intuitive by letting tasks be connected like an assembly line, where data flows step by step from creation to transformation to consumption without ever interrupting the main execution of the program, which makes it one of the most important tools in modern Java concurrency. We import the Completable Future class from the java.util.concurrent package to gain access to asynchronous and non-blocking programming capabilities in Java. We call Completable Future.supplySync and pass a lambda expression to it, which runs asynchronously on a separate background thread and returns the string pizza as the initial result of the asynchronous computation. We chain the thenApply method onto the Completable Future, which takes the result of the previous step, which is the string pizza, and transforms it by appending the text with extra cheese to it, and returns the newly combined string pizza with extra cheese as the result of this stage. We chain the thenAccept method onto the result of thenApply, which takes the final combined string pizza with extra cheese and consumes it by printing it to the console using system.out.println, displaying the message eating pizza with extra cheese without returning any value, since thenAccept is specifically designed for consuming results rather than transforming them. We use a try block to call thread.sleep and pass the value 1000 to it, which pauses the main thread for 1 full second, giving the background thread enough time to complete all the asynchronous stages of the Completable Future chain before the main thread exits the program. We include a catch block to handle any exception that might be thrown by thread.sleep, ensuring the program does not crash unexpectedly during the waiting period. The key concept here is that the entire chain of supply sync then apply and then accept forms a pipeline of asynchronous operations where each stage automatically receives the output of the previous stage and processes it further, and the whole pipeline runs on a separate background thread without blocking the main thread at any point during execution. The fork join framework is a powerful mechanism in Java that is specifically designed to handle very large and complex tasks by breaking them down into smaller and more manageable pieces so that they can be processed efficiently in parallel rather than trying to handle everything at once, which would be slow and inefficient, especially when dealing with massive datasets or computationally intensive problems. At the heart of this framework lies the idea of recursive decomposition, which means that instead of solving a problem in one go, we repeatedly divide it into smaller subproblems until each piece becomes simple enough to solve directly, and this approach not only makes the task easier to handle but also allows multiple parts of the work to be executed simultaneously on different threads, making full use of modern multi-core processors. Think of fork join framework as organizing a huge and overwhelming pile of laundry where initially the task looks too big for one person to handle efficiently, so instead of struggling alone you decide to split the work among a group of friends, and this initial act of dividing the workload into smaller portions represents the fork step, where a large task is broken into two or more smaller subtasks. As each friend receives their share of clothes, they check whether their portion is still too large to handle comfortably, and if it is, they further divide it and pass parts of it to others, continuing this process again and again, just like how the fork join framework keeps recursively splitting tasks until each subtask becomes small enough to be processed quickly and independently without further division. Once the tasks become small enough, such as each person having just one shirt to wash, the actual work begins, where each subtask is executed independently and in parallel, which significantly speeds up the overall process because many small tasks are being completed at the same time instead of waiting for one large task to finish. After all the individual pieces of work are completed, the final step is to combine the results back together, which is known as the join step, where the outcomes of all the smaller subtasks are merged to form the final result, just like all your friends bringing back freshly washed clothes and combining them into one clean and complete pile. The beauty of the fork join framework lies in how seamlessly it manages this entire process of splitting, executing, and combining tasks without requiring the programmer to manually handle complex thread management and synchronization details, because it internally uses a special thread pool known as the fork join pool, which efficiently distributes tasks among available threads and even uses techniques like work stealing, where idle threads can take work from busy threads to ensure maximum utilization and performance. Overall, the fork join framework provides an elegant and highly efficient way to tackle large-scale problems by turning a seemingly impossible task into many small manageable ones that can be solved in parallel and then brought back together into a final solution, making it an essential tool for high-performance concurrent programming in Java. We import the recursive task class and the fork join pool class from the java.util.concurrent package to gain access to the fork join framework, which is designed for parallel task execution. We create a class called SimpleSum that extends recursive task of type integer, which means this class represents a task that can be split into smaller subtasks, and each subtask will return an integer result when completed. We declare a private integer variable called work, which holds the amount of work that the current task is responsible for processing. We define a constructor that accepts an integer value and assigns it to the work variable so that each instance of SimpleSum knows exactly how much work it needs to handle. We override the compute method, which is the core method of every recursive task, and this is where we define the logic of how the task should be executed or split. We check inside the compute method whether the value of work is less than or equal to 10, and if that condition is true, it means the task is small enough to be solved directly, so we simply return work multiplied by 2 as the final result of this task without any further splitting. We handle the case where work is greater than 10 by treating it as too large to solve directly, so we create a new instance of SimpleSum called subtask and pass work divided by 2 to it, which represents 1/2 of the current workload. We call subtask.fork, which sends the subtask off to run in the background on a separate thread inside the fork join pool, allowing the current thread to continue working on its own portion simultaneously. We compute the other half of the work by creating another new instance of SimpleSum with work divided by 2 and calling compute directly on it, which processes that half on the current thread. We combine the result of the directly computed half with the result of subtask.join, which waits for the background subtask to finish and retrieves its result, and then we add both results together and return the final combined value. We create a fork join pool instance called pool inside the main method, which manages a pool of worker threads that are specifically optimized for handling fork join style parallel tasks. We call pool.invoke and pass a new SimpleSum object with the initial work value of 40, which triggers the entire recursive splitting and computation process and stores the final result in an integer variable called result. We call system.out.println to print the final result to the console, displaying the message final result followed by the computed value, which in this case will be 80 because the work of 40 gets recursively split and each piece gets multiplied by 2. The key concept here is that the fork join framework allows us to break a large problem into smaller and smaller pieces and solve them in parallel across multiple threads, and then combine all the individual results back together into one single final answer, which makes the overall computation significantly faster and more efficient. A reentrant lock is a powerful synchronization mechanism in Java that provides explicit control over access to shared resources by multiple threads, and it works very much like a physical key to a locked room where only one person can enter at a time and perform their work safely without interference from others, which helps prevent problems like data inconsistency or race conditions in concurrent programs. Think of reentrant lock as a special key that must be acquired before entering a room where important work is being done, and when a thread wants to access or modify shared data, it must first call log.lock, which is equivalent to taking the key and unlocking the door, and if the key is already being held by another thread, then the new thread cannot enter immediately and is forced to wait patiently outside until the key becomes available again. The term reentrant means that if the same thread that already holds the key tries to enter the room again, it is allowed to do so without getting blocked, which is like the same person being able to re-enter the room multiple times using the same key without any restriction, and this is particularly useful in situations where methods call each other and require access to the same locked resource. However, with great control comes great responsibility, because unlike simpler synchronization mechanisms, the programmer must manually ensure that the lock is released after the work is done, and this is where the try finally structure becomes extremely important, because it guarantees that the key is always returned no matter what happens during the execution of the protected code. Imagine a situation where someone enters the room, takes the key and starts working, but suddenly an unexpected error or exception occurs and they leave without returning the key, which would result in the room remaining permanently locked and no one else being able to enter and continue their work, causing the entire system to stall or behave incorrectly. To prevent this dangerous scenario, we always place the unlock call inside a finally block so that even if an exception occurs, the finally block will still execute and ensure that the key is returned and the room is unlocked, allowing other waiting threads to proceed normally without getting stuck indefinitely. In this way, reentrant lock provides a more flexible and feature-rich alternative to traditional synchronization by giving developers fine-grained control over locking behavior while still requiring careful handling to avoid mistakes, and when used correctly it ensures safe, efficient, and well-coordinated access to shared resources in a multi-threaded environment. We import the reentrant lock class from the java.util.concurrent.locks package to gain access to explicit locking mechanisms for thread-safe operations. We create a final instance of reentrant lock called lock, which acts as a key that only one thread can hold at any given point in time. We declare a private integer variable called count and initialize it to 0, which serves as our shared counter that will be safely modified by threads. We define a method called increment where we first call log.lock, which means the current thread picks up the key and gains exclusive access to the critical section of code, preventing any other thread from entering at the same time. We wrap the core operation inside a try block where we perform count ++, which increments the value of count by 1 in a protected and exclusive manner, ensuring no other thread can interfere during this moment. We use the finally block to call log.unlock, which releases the key and gives other waiting threads the opportunity to acquire the lock and execute their own operations, ensuring the lock is always released even if an unexpected error or exception occurs inside the try block. We create an instance of SafeCounter called counter inside the main method, and we call the increment method on it, which safely increases the count value by 1 using the locking mechanism. We call system.out.println to print the final value of count to the console, displaying the message count is 1 as the output. The most important concept here is that the finally block guarantees that lock.unlock is always called no matter what happens inside the try block, which prevents the lock from being held forever and ensures that other threads are never permanently blocked from accessing the shared resource. When we are dealing with very simple shared data such as a single number that needs to be updated frequently by multiple threads, using heavy synchronization mechanisms like locks can feel like using a large heavy door with a key and guard just to protect something very small and quick to handle, which not only adds unnecessary complexity but can also slow down performance because threads may end up waiting for each other even when the actual work takes almost no time to complete. In such situations, Java provides a much more efficient and elegant solution through atomic classes like atomic integer, which are specifically designed for lightweight thread-safe operations on single variables without the need for explicit locking and unlocking, which makes them both faster and easier to use in scenarios involving simple counters, flags, or accumulators. The magic behind these atomic classes lies in special low-level hardware instructions, often referred to as compare and swap operations, which allow the CPU to check the current value of a variable and update it in one single uninterrupted step so that no other thread can interfere in between, and this entire operation happens so quickly and atomically that from the perspective of all threads it appears as if the update occurred instantly and safely without any chance of inconsistency. To understand this better, imagine a shared digital counter that multiple people are trying to increment at the same time, and instead of forcing everyone to stand in a queue and take turns using a key like in a lock-based system, the atomic approach allows each person to attempt the update directly but only succeeds if the value has not changed in the meantime, and if it has changed, the operation is simply retried automatically until it succeeds, which eliminates waiting and keeps the system highly responsive. Because of this design, atomic classes avoid the overhead of context switching, blocking, and thread contention that usually comes with locks, and as a result they provide significantly better performance, especially in high concurrency environments where many threads are trying to update simple values simultaneously. At the same time, they are completely safe because they guarantee that each operation is executed as a single indivisible unit, ensuring that no partial updates or race conditions can occur even when multiple threads access the same variable at the exact same time. So overall, atomic classes like atomic integer offer a perfect balance of simplicity, speed, and safety for handling basic shared data, making them an ideal choice whenever full-blown locking mechanisms are unnecessary and would only add overhead without providing additional benefit. We create an atomic integer variable called score and set its initial value to 0, which acts as the starting point of our counter before any modifications are made. We use the increment and get method on the score variable to safely add 1 to its current value, making the score equal to 1 after this operation is completed. We use the addTangent method on the score variable and pass the value 10 to it, which safely adds 10 to the current value of score, making the final value equal to 11. We call system.out.println and inside it we call the get method on score, which retrieves the final accumulated value and prints it to the console as final score 11. These operations are completely thread safe, meaning even if multiple threads are running at the same time and trying to modify the score variable simultaneously, none of them will interfere with each other and no data will be lost or corrupted, because atomic integer performs every operation as one single indivisible and uninterruptible unit at the hardware level, ensuring absolute accuracy and consistency across all threads. Thank you for watching this video. I hope this explanation helped you clearly understand the concurrency and its core components in a structured and easy way.